Hello everybody, and in this tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to change your backlit photos from this to this. Stick around. Alright, let's get right into it. So, when you start out with your backlit photos, you're going to want to expose for your subject. And when you expose for your subject, you want to make sure your subject has nice even lighting. So to help out with this, you can kind of see the catch light. Let me just zoom in here. I already have a brush selected. I'm going to unselect this brush. I'm going to zoom in. You can see the little LED panel that I had put in front of my wife's face in order to have it so that she can get a little bit extra lighting on her face. This was shot with an EOS R, full frame camera. The settings that it was shot at was ISO 1600, focal length of 105 millimeters, and f4. If I wanted to improve the image quality further, I could have shot this at ISO 800 and 1/800th of a second, and below that I could have shot it at 1/25th of a second at ISO 320, and that would have improved the image quality further. But image quality isn't really the issue here. This is a perfectly sharp picture, relatively low noise, so we're going to get right into it. All right, so one of the things that's kind of popular in Instagram world is to have backlit photos have these nice warm golden hour feel. So what we're going to do first thing is we're going to modify the color temperature of the background. I'm going to bump up the color temperature, and I'm just going to do some really broad brush strokes over here, the background, and I'm going to over exaggerate the hell out of this. So let's go ahead and put O for auto mask, and you can see where the mask is touched, and we're going to go ahead and spill over a little bit onto our subject, and then spill over just a little bit, and then go ahead and bump up the temperature quite a bit. This nice golden color. And to balance that out, we're going to go over, press done, and we're going to go ahead and bump up the temperature overall of the image. Now you can see that there's kind of a little bit of green that's appearing right over here, so we're going to go ahead and move the tint over from that to magenta, and then we're going to go back to our brush over here, and we're going to kind of feather out these edges. So when I'm going to do that, I'm going to select the brush, go ahead and click erase, and my flow is at 40, my feather is at 44, and I'm going to just bring it down. I'm going to slowly feather out the edges so that it just looks like it's lightly spilling over onto our subject. And go over here, feather out these edges. There we go. That looks a little bit like it's just like an edge profile over here. And I'm going to do the same thing down here. Press O to see our mask. Go just feather these out so they're less intense than the rest of the side. So a flow of 40 means that you would have to do 2.5 times of a brush stroke in order to remove that brush. It's 40% flow. Okay. All right. Still a little bit of overspill over here, which I'm going to try and bring out to kind of reduce that green highlights over there. And that looks good to me. Let's also bump up the color temperature a little bit towards magenta and get that out over here. Okay. All right, so we got the initial image set up, and just before and after of the color temperature. Just add in some color temperature. Warmer images are more popular on the grams. So let's go ahead and now do our next thing to kind of add this ethereal kind of faded look that's pretty popular on Instagram. And we're going to do some magic right now. So what is that ethereal look? Well, it's pretty much just dehaze. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead. So I'm going to explain this as I'm going. The light, when the sun is behind it, it kind of gets this atmospheric haze that happens. And this atmospheric haze is what we're trying to reproduce. So typically this dehaze slider, what it does is it has large scale contrast. And we're going to go ahead and modify that large scale contrast by removing it. And as you can see, I have the mask inverted right now. As we increase the dehaze, and this is going to be really, really quite a bit. It's removing contrast of the image on a large scale. So I'm going to go ahead and go down here and move this down here, and we're going to go ahead and set this up like this. This adds this nice little ethereal look. We're going to increase the feather so that it lessens the effect of it. Adds more dehaze and desaturate just slightly. Okay, so going to be done with this. This is before, this is after. Before, this is after. Kind of see how that light looks like it's spilling over. It's a little bit intense right now, so we're going to go ahead and do a radial filter adjustment and then just bring down that dehaze a little bit so it's a little bit less of a spillover. Okay, that looks nice. So what we're going to do overall to the image is we're going to do some tone-based adjustments. We're going to lower the exposure just a little bit, and we're going to increase the contrast a little bit for the image to kind of bring back some of the detail that was lost by that dehazing. And then we're going to go back to the dehaze brush or dehaze filter, and we're going to go ahead and bring up the dehaze a little bit more now that we got a little bit of contrast back with the image. You can see that as I move this around, it adds that like wispy look that's pretty popular when stuff is being backlit. And you can move it around and you can kind of see how that would affect how your image looks. I like that little pop of color in the background right there, so I'm going to leave it over here. And I'm going to extend the box a little bit over here so it adds a little bit more spillover. I'm going to spill it over towards more of her face. And decrease the feather a little bit. Okay. And as a last point of adjustment, what I'm going to do is bring that up again. So it's a little bit more towards where the light's coming from the light. I want it to look like it's coming from the light, so it's centralized on the light and it just spills over onto the rest of the image. That looks nice. Okay, perfect. I'm going to reduce the saturation loss. Okay, that looks nice. Let's go ahead and go back to our brush, and we're going to go ahead and actually increase the contrast very slightly to make it so that those edges get a little bit more detail back. Okay, perfect. Oh, somehow a noise adjustment got on there. Remove the noise adjustment if you had that on yours. All right. There we go. All right, so before and after. Before and after. And that's kind of that like popular like backlit warm golden hour look that's in a lot of images on social media. But before we get done with this, we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of more global adjustments here. I'm going to bring down the highlights very slightly to bring a little bit of detail back inside that spot over there. I'm going to bring up the shadows to increase that fade look. And then we're going to go ahead and bring up the whites very slightly to overexpose the back. And then we're going to bring down the blacks a little bit to add a little bit of contrast to the skin. And once again, we're going to want to go ahead and if we want to fade it out more on the whole thing, we would add dehaze, but that kind of adds a little bit of a bigger effect than this. And I'm just going to go ahead and do a global dehaze of a very slight bit. So it looks like the light's just kind of spilling onto the side of her face, creating this golden texture. All right. And finally, so we're going to go ahead and do some vibrance adjustments for her eyes and her shirt hoodie that she's wearing down there. And I think that's going to look good to me. I'm not going to do any of the hue, saturation, luminous because it's not something that I want to mess with in this case. You totally could if you'd like to, but that's not something I want to do right now. All right, removing chromatic aberration. You should always remove chromatic aberrations. There's no downside to doing it. It's the color gradient between different strands of like if you zoom in on sharp edges, you can get this like weird color look. There's no downside to removing it. And profile corrections as personal preference. I like it with the profile corrections off because I want that kind of vignetted look around the outside. And that looks good to me. All right. So one more time. This is before and this is after. Before and after. All right. If you'd like this quick tutorial, go ahead and leave a like below and subscribe for some future content. This was Kevin Armentrout, and this is Kevin Armentrout Photography. See you in the next video.